Please go ahead, sir. We are live now.
Namaskar, good afternoon, and Jai Hind once again. Welcome uh, to another edition of a series of webinars, Illness to Wellness. And today's topic is COVID vaccination for children. COVID is again a hot topic. COVID has come back in a newer version. I don't know, maybe we can call it edition 3, which we are seeing more and more of it now. The Omicron, it is spreading. The numbers of COVID, the newer version, are spreading in our country. And even though on the whole COVID has become less, but it's still there. And one of the most important weapons that we have in our arsenal against the COVID is obviously the vaccine, the vaccination of all of the susceptible population. And our country has definitely made great strides in the process of vaccination, and probably it is one of the biggest vaccination drives that have been undertaken actually in our country, in India. But is everyone who should be vaccinated being vaccinated? And are the benefits of vaccination being passed on to all those who require it? And especially our children, especially the future of this country. So there's so many issues related to vaccination and Omicron and COVID. We're going to discuss this today in our today's episode of the webinar. And fortunately, to discuss this, we have very eminent speakers and panelists. I would request Shri Anil Rajputji, who is the chairman of the CSR committee of SOCHM, to kindly start officially the webinar and give a small brief introduction of our honored panelists. So over to you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Dr. Kesri. Dr. Kesri is my evergreen partner in our Illness to Wellness program. He's been there all weather with me. And first of all, I'd like to thank you, Dr. Kesri, for sharing this platform with me for the last year and a half, which has benefited many people who have joined us to listen to the very eminent personalities. I'd like to thank Dr. G.C. Khilnani, who's chairman of PSRI Institute of Pulmonary Critical Care and Sleep Medicine, Dr. Rahul Nagpal, Director and Head of Pediatrics, Fortis Hospital, New Delhi, Dr. Amita Mahajan, Senior Consultant, Pediatric Oncology, Indraprastha Hospital, Apollo Hospital. Good afternoon and a warm welcome to the webinar on COVID-19 vaccination for children, organized by SOCHM under its Illness to Wellness campaign. COVID-19 pandemic has upended the life of children and their families across the globe. It has produced high morbidity and mortality rates within the global population, along with risk factors for healthy growth and development amongst children. Children's health is one of the most important issues in the Sustainable Development Goals, and preserving their well-being during stressful times such as COVID-19 pandemic is exceedingly important. The World Health Organization, in its recent interim statement on COVID-19, vaccination for children and adolescents, stated that when compared with older age group, children and adolescents have fewer symptomatic infection and cases with severe disease and deaths from COVID-19. Cases reported to WHO from 30th December 2019 to 25th October 2021 show that children under 5 years of age represented 2% of reported global cases and 0.1% of reported global deaths. Older children and younger adolescents, 5 years to 14 years, accounted for 7% of reported global cases and 0.1% of reported global deaths, while older adolescents and young adults represents 15% of reported global cases and 0.4% of reported global deaths. While this on one hand does indicate COVID-19 infection has been comparatively less severe for children and adolescents than adults. On the other hand, amid rising concern due to Omicron, doctors and experts across the globe have observed an increase in COVID-19 cases amongst children in certain countries. Children with underlying medical conditions, diabetes, heart, obesity, epilepsy, neuropsychiatric disorder, and asthma are at an increased risk of severe COVID-19 illness. In the current scenario, children are seen as a priority group for vaccination. While several countries around the world have extended their COVID-19 vaccination drive to children, apart from its emergency authorization, India is yet to roll out its first COVID-19 vaccine for children. With the adult population in our country already vaccinated with at least one dose, if not both, and factors such as relaxations in COVID-19 guidelines, opening up of schools in an offline mode, and children starting to visit marketplaces and recreation centers, along with their parents, will make the unvaccinated kids and adolescents more vulnerable to infection. While the above reasons have prompted much concerns about the status of vaccination drive for those below the age of 18, the medical experts have also expressed reservations against the hasty use of COVID-19 vaccines among children. They say that the rush to vaccinate kids for COVID-19, which carries a far less threat to them, in the presence of some known and several unknown long-term risks, will be deeply concerning. Individuals and population benefits of immunizing children and adolescents in their specific epidemiological and social context must be also considered when developing COVID-19 immunization policies and programs for them. In this regard, the Ministry of Health and Family Welfare have recently stated that the National Expert Group on Vaccine Administration for COVID and National Technical Advisory Group on Immunization are deliberating and considering scientific evidence related to vaccination of beneficiaries aged less than 18 years. To my mind, these are benefits of vaccinating children and adolescents that go beyond the direct health benefits. Vaccination that decreases COVID-19 transmission in this age group may reduce transmission from children and adolescents to older adults and may help reduce the need for mitigation measures in schools. This will help in minimizing disruption to education for children and maintain their overall well-being and health. 2 years into COVID-19 pandemic, doctors worldwide are learning more about how this illness impacts children. Therefore, understanding the balance of risk and benefits of vaccination for this age group vis-a-vis relatively low risk posed by acute COVID-19 in children and uncertainty about long-term effects from vaccination and disease will be critical. Under these circumstances, the theme of today's webinar is extremely significant and holds great importance. We are joined by eminent personalities and experts in this field, and I'm sure they will throw more light on this, and everybody who joined us will benefit from their knowledge and experience. I welcome them once again and look forward to hearing their views on this topical issue. I wish this webinar great success. Thank you very much, and Jai Hind. Over to you, Dr. Kesri.
Thank you so much, sir. That was a very nice and elaborate description of what has happened already since almost past 2 years in our country, and our concern for the children, for their development, for their growth, and how children have till yet been weathering the COVID-19. I would say not just the disease, but this whole period, which may have been quite traumatic for them. And thankfully, we have wonderful people with us today who are going to discuss in detail all these issues. So, not taking much time, I would like to come to you, Sir Dr. Rahul Nagpal. First of all, I just want our viewers to understand how our children have faced this epidemic in past 2 years, and especially this year, in the beginning of this year, when we had that severe wave of COVID. What have the children gone through? You've been in hospital, you're working in one of the most eminent hospitals in the country. What have you seen and what is your opinion?
Besides the physical aspects of the COVID-19, the children have been restricted to their homes. They have not been going to schools. There is a complete social isolation. This restrictive environment has not only affected them physically, but mentally, and in, dare I say, their developmental disorders have increased. We see it all the time. The screen time has increased for children. They are witnessing the already existing issues like drunkard behavior of maybe their parent or whoever, the fights, the frustration, and the desperation of the parents when they have to look after their children, meet their ends. And on top of that, we are bombarded with the news of all the time death, disability. And last year, when there was such a big wave, in fact, this year, when there was such a big wave, everyone lost some family member or a friend. That has scared the children. Anxiety, nervousness, sometimes agitation has been the feature. There are papers now which are saying that the developmental disorders like autism have been identified more and more often during this time. When they have been on the screen, children have lost the sense of reality. They are living in the virtual world. Many times I joke with children that you have become a cartoon character yourself because they are only seeing their, particularly in their nuclear families, their parents and the cartoons, or the talk of death, disease, disability. Physical matters apart, these mental conditions, these conditions have really taken a huge space. Physically also, though, as Mr. Rajput correctly mentioned, that the signs, the clinical picture is very mild. Let me remind all of you that even in 12 to 17 years of age, there are 14 crore 52 lakh children present in our country. We do see off and on critical cases, and as already mentioned, in people with children with obesity, asthma, neuropsychiatric disorders. not all, but many of them have been into ICUs. And the later MISC, or the multiple inflammatory syndrome of childhood, cannot be ignored. Though rare, but with the sheer number of population which we have, it is a significant number as a whole. So these are few pointers which I wanted to share with you initially.
Thank you, sir. That was very important actually, because we all feel that the children are suffering a lot. They are suffering because of the pressures, all the pressures that suddenly have fallen on their shoulders, so to say, because they are seeing one of the few of the worst times probably, which no one would like our children to come to face with. Thank you, sir, for that view of yours. Dr. Khilani, sir, I'd like to come and to you and ask you, I'm sure because you are such a senior specialist, and you must have been seeing different types of cases. I'm sure you must have been giving your expert opinion about children and adolescents as well who might have been admitted to your hospital. What is your view about children and COVID? A general view, then we'll come to the specifics.
Casey, thank you very much, and thanks to SOCM for giving me this opportunity. I lost the count how many times I have been on with you on this. But if forgive me, I'm actually an adult pulmonologist or physician, so I don't see children below 13 years of age. In fact, I am not authorized to see them. But I would put up another point, from the parents' perspective. During the COVID times, from the behavioral point of view, the obesity, alcoholism, smoking, child abuse has gone up because the parents are all the time at home. It is documented that the altercations between the parents has also increased in some cases because of staying home all the time. And of course, the illness have been talked about, loss of parents, and there are lakhs of children who are orphaned because of this. That is another thing. Obesity. I am aware from my personal knowledge, obesity is there not only in the parent, but the child obesity is a big problem nowadays because they don't go to play. They keep eating at home. They are ordering food or whatever, and that is a big problem. And all this boils down to the fact that they are not going out. Going out to play in the garden, they are not meeting their friends. And from the time immemorial, we parents were always shouting and screaming, don't watch TV, don't watch computer, don't be on the screen. And now we are asking them to be on the screen all the time for their education also. So all those things combined, the overall development of children is affected. We'll talk about COVID little later when you ask me. So I'll stop my comment being not a pediatrician. I shouldn't go on. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, sir. That was very actual, and this is what we are seeing. All of us who are dealing in chronic diseases, chronic practices, we are seeing that parents come to us, adults come to us with these problems. They're very irritable, they're depressed, and as we are seeing chronic disease, metabolic syndrome, diabetes, and blood pressure, all of them have gone out of control. And they have, because they are young, they also have small children, and obviously they are witnessing all this. And as Dr. Rahul was telling, they already have a huge burden on them, how to maintain their families and how to keep on going. Here, I'd like to come to you, Dr. Mahajan. Since you are dealing in, I would say, a special group of children, maybe in hematology and oncology, and they always have had special needs. What have you seen during this period of COVID? I would say, past two years. What is your observation?
Thank you so much, Dr. Kesri. And my previous two panelists, they've already highlighted the impact on, children as a whole. But within that, and most children do get away with either asymptomatic or very minimal illness. Of course, they have some post-COVID complications that are unique to children. But children who are immunocompromised, they, in fact, 2 years ago when the epidemic started, the whole pediatric oncology community was in a, confusion as to how do we manage? Because, is COVID going to be more deadly for children than cancer itself? Should we defer treatment? Should we limit treatment? Should we reduce the intensity of treatment? So in fact, globally, there were efforts to try and understand this quickly. So even in India, within the community, we came together quickly that we will register every single case of cancer on treatment and so understand whether they are having a more severe course. And the overall experience, both within our country and globally, has been that they do get more severe illness than healthy children. So there are more chances of getting hospitalized and occasionally to even losing life in children due to COVID, because of their compromised status. But the impact has been lesser than what we had, we were afraid to imagine or what we had anticipated. So very quickly, within 3 to 4 months, we came to the conclusion that treatment has to go on. We will try to do it as safely as possible. We'll try and limit hospital visits. So we actually adjusted a lot, like starting virtual clinics, so that for at least for follow-up, while their immunity is still low, they don't have to come. We organized home collection of samples. So at least for a CBC, they are not already overburdening a lab and being exposed to so many people, many of whom are likely to be positive. So many steps were taken to limit their exposure. But on the whole, we have continued treatment as per protocol. But the impact on COVID in a country like ours, during the lockdown, the big impact was that cancer registration in children fell down by 50%. So that was another study that we did together, that because they could not physically come to a hospital, because they could not, parents were frightened of COVID so much. And actually some cancer hospitals were like, the biggest hospital is Tata Hospital. For a few weeks, it was made an exclusively COVID hospital. So where does the patient in Maharashtra actually go for cancer treatment? So because of these limitations, the impact on cancer has been indirect as well. Like Dr. Nagpal, addressed that, apart from the COVID infection, the indirect impact has been much more. So again, for children in our category and other illnesses also, the indirect impact has been far more severe because of interruptions in treatment. We expect we will see more relapses. We have seen delayed presentation. We've seen misdiagnosis. But within, having COVID infection during treatment, yes, more severe, but perhaps not as bad as what we had imagined. Within our hospital, over 1 year period, we had 50 children with cancer who developed COVID infection. We lost one child to an unusual complication and 4 required hospitalization, which is much more than healthy children, but not as bad as it could possibly have been.
I think that is a very important point, and this is something that, in fact, we've been seeing in the adults also, which we saw during the period of lockdown. There were many studies which actually reported lesser numbers of MI and lesser angina patients being admitted and lesser angioplasties or angiographies being done. But actually, what has turned out is that it's not the cases have gone down. It is that lesser and lesser people are moving out because they're just afraid of going to the hospital and seeking attention. So actually, this has been an indirect effect, and which has actually been very detrimental on the whole. Yes, that is definitely very true. Thank you, ma'am. Thank you so much for your contribution. Dr. Rahul Nagpal, sir, I'd like to come to you. Now let's address the topic of concern today, the vaccination in children. So what's the status today? Please elaborate on this.
So let us talk about India. One vaccine, which is Zydus, made by Cadila, they are tested their vaccine and emergency use authorization has been given by the DCGI. The other vaccine, which is Covaxin by the Bharat Biotech, that the interim report of its safety and efficacy has been given. with the government, but the phase 2 and phase 3 trials are still not over. And right in the beginning, Mr. Rajput had mentioned that in Rajya Sabha, the health minister last Friday itself had said that the National Expert Group on Vaccine Administration of COVID-19 and National Technical Advisory Group on Immunization is deliberating and is waiting for the scientific basis to start vaccination in children. So these are the two vaccines which could possibly start in children for now, as I believe it will be started in children between 12 to 17 years of age. There is another vaccine which is being developed by Serum Institute of India, Novavax, and that is still in phase 2 and 3 trials that could come up in near future. Even Johnson & Johnson vaccine, they are doing a global trial in children from 5 years onwards, and India is one country where they are doing the trials. Again, they are in phase 2 trial basis. The last vaccine which is under trial is the biological E by the BE group. It is also being under investigations. So in near future, we have 2 vaccines which could come up. The third vaccine which is being used in many countries, like of the Pfizer and the Moderna, which is the messenger RNA vaccine, it is being used in children above 5 years in many countries and with good results. In fact, they have said that in the Delta variant, at the time of Delta variant, the vaccine which was given to children from 2 years to 5 years had 95%, 91% efficacy. And the same vaccine, when it was given between 5 to 12 years, had almost 100% efficacy. And between 12 to 17 years, it was 95 or 96% efficacy. Obviously, since when the Omicron has arrived, that data has yet to come. But having said all this, as of now, to the best of my knowledge, the Indian government is not in a position or not deliberating the import of these vaccines which are being used in children elsewhere. So I think our children will have to wait.
Thank you, sir. Our children will have to wait. The end line is very important. I think it is not just our children; it is their parents and especially their grandparents who have suffered a lot. At least we have seen during the second wave that a lot of children were asymptomatic carriers, because these are anecdotal incidences that we've seen in our practice, that there was no other way except for the children to carry the infections to their grandparents, and they had to bear the brunt. Dr. Khilani sir, I would like to ask you this question, that many parents, when there are discussions about vaccination, that soon it is imminent and children would also require to take vaccinations, they're very much afraid about the side effects of vaccine which might be there, because it has not been in use as extensively as the vaccine for adults. So till yet, what is the scenario of adverse effects of vaccine, even though in adults that our country, because almost 50 crore people have been vaccinated now. So what is
there has been, Dr. Kesari, there have been loads of information as far as the adverse effects. And in today's, world of information technology, you go to the Google and you find out everything what is happening. So if you talk about Pfizer and Moderna vaccine, these are the vaccines which have caused myocarditis and pericarditis in young people, young adolescents, young adults. There have been minimal deaths, but nevertheless, when you say myocarditis, heart involvement, it scares you. And these reports are in public domain, and also there are official publications in the peer-reviewed journal. But as far as the Indian vaccines are concerned, namely the Astra vaccine or Covishield vaccine, there have been minimal adverse effects. Of course, the thrombotic events have been documented, very few. Neurological complications have been documented, very few. I may not be able to give figures offhand. So that scare is there. So there's another thought of school which says that, which Dr. Rajput, Mr. Anil Rajput very nicely narrated the numbers. In the previous coronavirus outbreaks, not pandemics, the mortality in children was zero. None of the children below 13 years died in 2002 outbreak. So, and also people are comparing adverse outcomes with vaccine vis-a-vis the adverse outcome with the infection, because the infections in the children are largely asymptomatic, but of course anecdotal inflammatory reactions are there. So if you compare the vaccine with the complications of infections, if you compare with the both, there are various schools of thought. But overall, the initial hesitancy about the vaccination in India, which we saw in the beginning, January as it started, there was severe hesitancy among the doctors and healthcare workers also, among the frontline workers also. That has been replaced by aggressiveness in getting vaccination. Now, human mind is that, as the Omicron has come, the lines for vaccination have become longer, because, the scare is there initial. In between, there was a euphoria that, COVID is not our problem anymore. People were started moving, the marriage parties, 1,000, 2,000 people, and I'm aware of that. People had threw away their masks, especially in Delhi. I don't know about others. I'm told there was mask was conspicuous by absence. But as the Omicron has come, I see on the roads people wearing masks. So that scare drives a person, or the panic or the alarm. And I don't think coming back to the point, I'm not drifting from what you asked. Once the vaccine, whether it's Covaxin, which is probably the vaccine which we are the phase, the trial between 2 and 18 years have been conducted, and results are with the authorities. As soon as it comes, people would actually come forward. Now the committee has to decide whether it's feasible. Now there's another issue of booster dose, which is, or third dose as it is called, or additional dose as it is called. What will be the preference for the administrator? Will they put their money into the third or booster dose to the elders, or would they? There could be limitation of resources, not only in terms of quantum of vaccine. There could be a limitation of syringes, giving injections, logistics, all those things, because the third dose is a reality. And if I could quote the data, in America, 1 in 100 elderly over 65 years are dead because of COVID. And if you talk about less than 65, 1 in 400 population have died. So, and it is also true that when you give the third dose to people, I'm talking about Pfizer vaccine, that is a vaccine, the antibody level increased from 400 to 2500 mean. That was, so third dose not only gives the antibody level, third dose also gives the protection. So I guess Government of India will have to decide whether to open both, give vaccination to children. It's a very tough call. Or to give third dose, whereas we haven't finished vaccinating full adults. We know that the full vaccination we have hardly reached 50% now. So I know I'm little being skeptical, or you can say I'm giving you data for our pediatricians to give their view as to what should be the correct way. But nevertheless, I'm not against vaccinating school children. It is important for them, for the school children to be vaccinated so that they are protected. In case they get infection, they should get mild infection. We also know that vaccination not only prevents infection and severity, it also prevents the chances of transmission and the duration of transmission. Combining this all, I think all children should be vaccinated because COVID kahin ja nahi raha. It looks COVID is going to be around. And so far, vaccination is protecting us against all kinds of variants, thankfully. I hope the Omicron, like Delta was 10%, the efficacy was 10% less against Delta, but surely it prevented the severity. So I think all children should be vaccinated within the safe so that they are protected and their families protected. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. That is very interesting, and that is very true that there is this dilemma of numbers, logistics, and organization, and what to do first to protect the adult population, and at the same time, it is very important to provide the same protection to the children also. Dr. Amita, I'd like to come to you, and I'd like to ask you one question, and this question is from me. I would say that just like the population, the children, the special subgroup of children that you address, I have so many type 1 diabetic patients, and in fact, understanding their susceptibility to complications, um, we were thinking that maybe children with type 1 and immunocompromised children would be allowed some vaccination when the vaccination drive actually started. So what have you noted? Were children with special issues vaccinated at that time or not? Or it has been a blanket ban?
No. So far, the vaccines have not been opened for children at all, even children with what we consider the high risk populations. For the whole pediatric population, yes, logistic is also a concern because Dr. Nagpal already highlighted the Zydus vaccine has received emergency approval, but their capacity per month cannot, cope with our population, and that vaccine is licensed for 12 to 17. Now, Covaxin, on the other hand, does have a tremendous production capability, but their trials were from 2 to 18, so the licensing they have sought for is 2 to 17. I mean, over 18 is anyway getting immunized. And the expert advisory committee on COVID vaccination in India has actually approved that vaccine. However, in fact, we were told as of 1st November, it will be rolled out for the high-risk population. But the DCGI approval for emergency authorization is still pending. And that is understandable because one, the licensing sought for is from 2 years to 18 years. Even in most Western countries, only children above 5 are being immunized. So between 2 to 5 is again, so I think probably if had they asked for licensing in a phased manner from 12 to 17 or for high risk population, the program, it is my understanding that the government is committed to pediatric immunization. So the logistics in terms of production capacity is one, but also the DCGI has to give approval. And once that happens, it is planned that it will be given out again in a phased manner for high risk population for 12 to 17, and we will address less than 12 later on when things are a little bit rolling out. Vaccine hesitancy in India, I mean, to be honest, as an ordinary citizen, I am just amazed and impressed at the low level of vaccine. I mean, this has been the most successful immunization program in India. We already do good programs, but this has been amazing. I mean, over 90% of eligible population above 18 years as of today has received at least one shot. I mean, this is phenomenal. So I think that pediatric immunization, there will be hesitancy, but I'm sure the government will roll it out with some awareness program, some in a very manner, the way the adult vaccination program has been delivered. It will be age-wise moving downwards with as confidence builds up. But again, patients like yours and ours will get priority. That we've been told 2 years ago that when it happens, children in those lists are also out. Even for adults, these patients got priority. So again, they will be out. The certification required for that will be minimal. Their doctor's letter is good enough. They won't need any special certificates. But the exact timing, but I think it's imminent. It's just that at least for there must be capacity to cope with this, and the DCGI has to agree. It's my personal feeling that had the approval been sought for 12 to 17 in the beginning and then 5 to 12, maybe things could have rolled out already. But they've asked for approval for 2 to 18, and 2 to 5 is not being immunized in most parts of the world. So I think DCGI is understandably deliberating the risk versus benefit ratio, as we've already highlighted that most children will get away with very mild or no illness.
Thank you. Thank you. And in fact, you've really highlighted a very important point about the success of this immunization program. And as far as I can recollect, and I can see that the polio vaccination program has also been driven tremendously. I think it was a phenomenal success. It has been given in homes and slums, and people have gone out and delivered those vaccines. So I think India is doing extremely well in these preventive measures. So I'm sure once it is rolled out for children, it would.
The pediatric vaccination program is important not just to prevent disease in children, but really to build confidence all around, that we open our schools and open our playgrounds and get them back to normal life, which has really gone off track. So that confidence within school authorities, within the parent community, will come once some degree of immunization has been rolled out. So that's my perception.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you. Dr. Rahul Nagpal, sir, I'd like to ask you one question related to COVID. Even though we have just heard, and you also mentioning that the severity of the COVID infection is not much in children usually, and the mortality is very, very minimal. But there have been reports that even when children have suffered from COVID illness, the post illness inflammatory reactions, I think, which you were just mentioning, could you please elaborate on those? So children who have passed COVID infection, who have overcome it, do they still get some complications at a later stage? Is it possible?
The most important complication is MIS-C, which means multiple inflammatory syndrome in childhood. This happens at least after 1 month of the active disease. The incidence of this happening in our country is not well published, but it could be like in other countries. It is reported to be 1 in 10 lakh children who are affected. This is probably because of the hyperactivity of the immune system after the active COVID disease. Mind you, it may not happen it is not necessary that the child has to have a severe COVID disease and then later on develop an MIS-C. These children come with high-grade fever, usually for more than 24, 48 hours. They have tachycardia, their heart rate is very high. Any of the organs can be inflamed, or all the organs can be inflamed, including heart, lungs, kidney, GI tract, and in one case, this child came with seizures. There are skin rashes, their tongues are red, inflamed. We used to have a disease known as Kawasaki disease. It somewhat resembled that with few differences. What is most important for treatment of these children is the early recognition. And if you recognize and monitor and treat accordingly, the mortality here also is not too high, but the morbidity is quite a bit. Having said that, children who develop myocarditis have a long treatment to go. Besides this MIS-C, I'm being very short because it has got a lot of technical stuff going behind that. There are reports of long COVID-like symptoms even in children and adolescents, where tiredness, fatigues, muscle aches, loss of appetite, etc. have been seen. So besides the most dangerous one, which is MIS-C, these symptoms are also seen. Also, the fear part, those children who get COVID and the way many parents are anxious about the disease. And I always tell my patients, the parents of my patients, that anxiety transmits. And if the parent is anxious, the child is anxious, they're nervous. And in many cases, we had to take the help of psychologists to help them through that process. So I feel even if most of the patients have mild disease, but I personally, as a pediatrician, feel that this COVID has to be prevented in children, mild or otherwise. Not only that, children are probably the reservoir of infections. And if we want to limit the spread of pandemic, we can't stop it. I don't think that we can always stop it. We will have to live with it. But unless children are vaccinated and are immunized, they will always act as reservoirs for the transmission of infection.
Very true, sir. I think you have mentioned a very important point that the children act as reservoirs of this infection, and I think this is what we've seen the beginning of this year, that when the children were going out in the societies and the playgrounds, probably they were bringing back the infection to the elders in the family.
Yes.
And taking your point of hyperreactivity of the immune system, Dr. Khilani sir, I'd like to come to you. Do you see any such thing, any such syndrome in the adults as well? That after recovery from the COVID, post recovery, do they have complications later? And what are those? Could you please elaborate?
Long COVID, of course, we have discussed, I think. But,
Yes.
But if you see even the acute effects of COVID, they are all immune mediated. It is actually hyperimmune response. What is called as dysregulated hyperimmune syndrome, which is exemplified by pneumonia, sepsis, ARDS, and death, is actually an immune reaction. What the question that you have asked is of long COVID. That is, we do not see this kind of syndrome, that is MIS-C in adult, but what we see in long COVID is two types of symptom complex. One is severe fatigue, and just now I had a patient before coming here who was, after 6 months, he said, I'm unable to function. I just don't feel like getting out of the bed. I don't have fever. This kind of fatigue is continuing. And to give you the historical background, the 2012 outbreak of coronavirus, 3 years later when they phoned up people, 40% still had fatigue. So it can be as bad as that. Besides that, feeling feverish, they're not actually, when they record the temperature, they don't have fever, they feel chilled, they feel feverish. But those symptoms we physicians tend to ignore. Brain fogging is so common after fatigue. They think that their memory is not. Neuropathic symptoms are pretty common. Body aches, joint pains are these are the ones. But what is more severe in long COVID is the lung involvement and the cardiac involvement. Cardiac involvement is uncommon in terms of cardiomyopathy, but it does occur. Myocardial infarctions occur because it's basically a thrombotic disease. But what we see as a pulmonologist is, since the 90% of the people with moderate or severe COVID have pneumonia, bilateral pneumonia, what we see is the post-COVID pneumonia, post-COVID pulmonary fibrosis. Now, this is incapacitating. Some of the people who require oxygen all the time, some people are weaned off the oxygen, and unfortunately, what I saw during last 1 month was exacerbation because of the bad air quality. Time immemorial, we know that pneumonias are more common during air pollution. We know that heart attacks are more common. Dr. Pandey's study that I was part of, we documented that there were 25% more emergency visits with asthma, COPD, and heart attacks in response to the air pollution 24 to 48 hours prior to that. But during the post-COVID time, our COVID patients who were otherwise cruising, they started having symptoms of cough, shortness of breath, expectoration, and more respiratory infections. I don't know whether I'm going off the track since you have asked me the question. So these kind of exacerbations keep on happening these patients, meaning thereby there is something in the immune dysregulation which continues to occur in these patients. Having said that, there are some patients for a few months they continue to have recurrent increase in their C-reactive proteins and D-dimer also, and this is also an immune reaction. This I have seen more in elderly, and these kind of symptoms, along with raised CRP and D-dimer, they respond to nothing else but small doses of steroids, exemplifying that this is actually an immune-mediated reaction. So this is what we are saying, but answering your, coming back to your question, that MISC type of reaction 30 days after the, we somehow I would commit myself that we don't see in our patients. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. I would just like to ask you one more question from myself, which is related to what you were just talking about. When we first saw the CT scans, scores of 22, 25, we were of the opinion that the coming few years are going to be of COPD-like illnesses because such fibrosis does not regress. So it's already more than 6 months since that we've had this wave. Extensive number of cases with severe CT score. What has been your view of as of now? Is it the same as we were expecting, or the fibrosis
All
results in
pundits
such?
have gone wrong. All pundits have gone wrong. There are people who had a score of 25 over 25 who were in the ICU and was on ventilator 6 months down the line, even without any antifibrotic drugs or steroids. They have recovered almost completely. That is one thing. Secondly, the people who are immunocompromised, elderly, and then all those risk factors, COPD, past tuberculosis, these are the people who are likely to have more fibrosis. We generally evaluated them 6 weeks after their 4 to 6 weeks after their discharge, and at that moment we evaluate them and with the lung functions. If they are short of breath, if their oxygen saturation is low on walking or at rest, we evaluated them with lung functions and 6-minute walk test. One thing was characteristic, which as a physician I will tell you that majority of them, despite being short of breath, their spirometry vital capacity was normal, but diffusion was affected. And that's the characteristic of COVID pneumonia or post-pneumonia. Diffusion capacity was disproportionately low, and when we did the 6-minute walk test, there was significant desaturation. These are the patients that we did CT scan. Then we find the evidence of fibrosis, and then we treat them accordingly. I need not go into this, but the story is rolling out still. We are still studying the post-COVID, yet we don't know what is the ideal treatment for post-COVID shortness of breath. But certainly there are more asthma attacks, there are more bronchial hyperreactivity, there are COPD people have more exacerbation, those who have pre-existing lung disease and post-tubercular fibrosis. With the COVID inflammation super adding, they are more symptomatic. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. So I would just, for the benefit of common layman, I would like to say कि जिन लोगों को कोविड बहुत सीवियर हुआ था, जो सब लोग CT स्कोर की बात करते थे कि 24 है, 22 है, 20 है, इसका मतलब कि ज्यादातर लंग्स जिनकी काम नहीं कर रही थी, जो फाइब्रोस थी, जो मान लीजिए रस्सी जैसी हो गई थी, वो भी कुछ समय बाद अब काम कर रही है। तो ये एक बहुत राहत की बात है, क्योंकि जिनको बहुत सीवियर कोविड हुआ था वो लोग बहुत परेशान थे, उनके घर वाले बहुत परेशान थे और ये सोच रहे थे कि अब ये कभी इनकी नॉर्मल जिंदगी हो नहीं पाएगी। लेकिन हम ऐसे मरीजों को देख रहे हैं कि जो 20-22 उससे ज्यादा स्कोर में भी अब प्रोफेसर हैं, जो लेक्चर देते हैं, जो काम करते हैं, तो जो बोलते हैं, ये बहुत अच्छी बात है। और डॉक्टर खिलनानी, इनको इतना एक्सपीरियंस और इन्होंने अपनी तरफ से बताया, तो दिस इज एक्चुअली वेरी हार्टनिंग न्यूज। Dr. Amita Mahajan, what would you like to say about your subgroup of population, that I mean the kids that you see predominantly, because probably they are being given steroids also. So do they fare better or worse post-COVID?
So in terms of acute COVID, we already said that they do fare worse, but maybe not as frighteningly worse as what we had imagined it will be. In terms, what has been interesting, and we recently published our own data, so we looked at globally that children who were on immunosuppressive treatment for whatever reason, they seem to have a low, there are only anecdotal case reports of the MIS-C syndrome that Dr. Nagpal was, describing, the post-COVID syndrome. And we can only speculate that perhaps the fact that they receive some steroid intermittently, they are immunocompromised, immunosuppressed, so their immune response, which is an immunological condition, has not been as robust, and that's why there is only occasional case reports of that syndrome. So in some way, they may be protected from this particular complication. That's just our speculation, because looking at their, and by now there is a lot of global literature on this subject. The other thing is that we had imagined that we will see a lot of immune thrombocytopenia, because in children it's a common condition, it's a virus. 22% of in the second wave patients were actually positive patients were, or positive affected individuals were children, but we haven't seen that. So there have been occasional post-COVID ITP, but it is neither in adults nor in children that has panned out. So like Dr. Khilani said, that it's doing its own thing, and we are just always catching up and trying to understand it. Whatever we had anticipated or imagined hasn't happened, and some unexpected things have, so MIS-C is uniquely confined to children. And that is again because they have a very robust innate response. So that is probably why they are having, like Kawasaki also happens only in children. So it's probably due to their very robust immune. So whatever actually prevents them from happening a severe illness is also more likely to give a post. So, that is how it's working, seems to be working out.
Thank you, ma'am. अभी हमारे पास समय कम है, but there are some things which we must touch upon, and we must talk about today. Dr. Rahul, I would put up 2 questions to you immediately. एक तो ये कि जिन बच्चों को कोविड हो गया, क्योंकि बहुत सारे बच्चों को हुआ है, तो उनके अंदर इम्यूनिटी कितनी रोबस्ट बनती है, कितने समय तक रहती है? Would you please elaborate? ऐसा कुछ है, if there are any studies?
किसी को ये भी नहीं पता अभी तक कि कौन से एंटीबॉडीज का क्या लेवल प्रोटेक्टिव है कंप्लीटली, तो मुश्किल है। अभी तक तो ऐसा कुछ नहीं है। जैसे अडल्ट्स को दोबारा हो जाता है, बच्चों को भी दोबारा हो सकता है। एक्चुअली स्पीकिंग देयर इज नो डेटा व्हिच आई एम अवेयर ऑफ, और दोबारा हो सकता है कितने समय के बाद ये भी कहना मुश्किल है। ये हो सकता है कि सीवियरिटी ऑफ इन्फेक्शन क्या है, बच्चे की इम्यूनिटी क्या है, उस पे काफी कुछ डिपेंड करता है जो बाकी इन्फेक्शियस डिजीजेस में होता है। पर कोविड ने सब रूल्स फॉलो नहीं किए हैं। अभी इसके बारे में मैं कुछ नहीं कह पाऊंगा। Probably Dr. Amita knows little more on that.
डॉक्टर अमिता के पास भी आएंगे यही सवाल लेके। सर, डॉक्टर खिलानी सर, ओमिक्रॉन इंडिया में आ गया है। आई थिंक आज एक रिपोर्ट आई है कि इस रिपोर्ट की बच्चे को भी 3 साल के बच्चे को भी डिटेक्ट हुआ, इज बीन डिटेक्टेड पॉजिटिव। क्या होगा अब हमारे देश में?
देखिए, ऐसा है कि ओमिक्रॉन WHO की सुबह की रिपोर्ट है कि 71 कंट्रीज में तो आ गया है, पर उन्होंने ये भी कहा है कि 71 कंट्रीज में डायग्नोस किया है, पर उनका मानना है कि ये पूरी दुनिया में फैल गया है। एक इसलिए जो है ना, दूसरी बात जो आपने पूछा ना सर से री इन्फेक्शन की बात, देयर इज नो डाउट जो नेचुरल इन्फेक्शन होता है वो बेस्ट इम्यूनिटी देता है। जो इंग्लैंड से स्टडी आई थी, इंग्लैंड और अमेरिका में डेटा अच्छा आता है, उसी को हम फॉलो करते हैं ज्यादातर। द री इन्फेक्शंस आर एक्सीडिंगली अनकॉमन and the best immunity and long lasting immunity is provided by the natural infection, because natural जो spike protein होता है, जो mRNA वैक्सीन है और जो हमारी जो कोविशील्ड वैक्सीन है, they only address the spike protein। और जैसे इस और जो इस वेरिएंट्स होते हैं, म्यूटेशन स्पाइक प्रोटीन पे होते हैं। और जबकि जो नेचुरल इन्फेक्शन होता है उसमें बहुत सारे एंटीजेंस होते हैं, जैसे कोवैक्सीन है, वो होल वायरस वैक्सीन है, तो उसमें उसका जो प्रोटेक्शन होता है वो दिस इज ऑलवेज लॉन्गर लास्टिंग, दिस इज beyond doubt। So anybody who has got infection, and I also have evidence that infection with delta virus, जो प्लाज्मा जो डेल्टा वायरस का है, that is providing the best protection against infection। जिसको डेल्टा वायरस इन्फेक्शन हो गया, ऑल्दो वी डोंट नो, बट अप्रैल में हमें वही हुआ था, तो दोज आर द बेस्ट प्रोटेक्टेड पीपल। जो स्टडी इजराइल से आई है, उसमें ये है कि द इफेक्टिवनेस ऑफ वैक्सीन, एफिकेसी ऑफ वैक्सीन तब कहते हैं जो जो एक्सपेरिमेंटल सेटअप में होती है कि आपने वैक्सीन दिया, रैंडमाइज ट्रायल करी और कितने परसेंट, वो 91% एफिकेसी जो फाइजर और मॉडर्ना की थी, वो इफेक्टिवनेस में कम आ जाती है। Effectiveness of vaccine in people after 6 months came down from 90% to 20%, 20 to 50% रेंज है। इसका मतलब ये है कि जिनको वैक्सीन लगी थी 6 महीने बाद, उनकी जो प्रोटेक्शन थी वो 20 से 25 या 50% मान लो, तो इन्फेक्शन रेट्स बहुत बढ़ गए। तो ये तो तय है कि वैक्सीन के बाद 6 महीने लगने के बाद उसकी एफिकेसी, इफेक्टिवनेस कम हो जाती है, एंटीबॉडी लेवल भी कम हो जाती है। व्यक्ति विशेष में एंटीबॉडी लेवल का प्रोटेक्शन हम नहीं बोल सकते, बिकॉज देयर आर पीपल विद वेरी हाई एंटीबॉडी लेवल हु वेंट ऑन वेंटिलेटर, ये भी हुआ। लेकिन ये तो तय है कि 6 महीने बाद कोविड वैक्सीन की जो इफेक्टिवनेस कम हो जाती है, इसीलिए बूस्टर का सवाल आया। और सबसे पहले इजराइल ने और आई थिंक नीदरलैंड ने ये बूस्टर शुरू किया था, और उसके बाद सबको दिया गया। ये थोड़ा हम पीरियाडिक से थोड़ा बाहर जा रहे हैं, लेकिन मैं बहुत ग्रेट प्रोपोनेंट हूँ, क्योंकि इसको मैंने क्लोजली स्टडी किया है कि बूस्टर डोज का समय आ गया हमारे। और जिन लोगों को वैक्सीनेशन है उनको, दूसरा ये भी है कि स्कूल ऑफ थॉट है कि जिनको नेचुरल इन्फेक्शन कंफर्म आरटीपीसीआर से हो गया है, अगर उनको बूस्टर ना भी दिया जाए तो भी इतनी बड़ी बात नहीं है, बिकॉज द वैक्सीन ऑलरेडी वर्क बूस्टर फॉर। आर यू गेटिंग माय पॉइंट? आई एम श्योर।
Yes, yes, yes.
सो
Disease is already
ये
boosted
सब
there.
मेरे मन की बातें हैं जो आपके जरिए मैं बोल रहा हूँ, लेकिन
जी
अब
जी।
सरकार जो भी डिसाइड करेगी। थैंक यू।
Abhi, I think I would like we can have a small discussion about the priority of vaccination, but after this question to Dr. Amita. डॉक्टर साहब एक बात बताइए, बिकॉज वी हैव डिस्कस लॉट ऑफ वैक्सीन, और अब हमें समझ में आ रहा है कि इंडिया में कई सारी तरह तरह की वैक्सीन आएंगी। एंड माय क्वेश्चन इज स्पेसिफिकली टू यू, एंड आई थिंक इट इज़ वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट फॉर यू, क्योंकि आपके पेशेंट इम्यूनो कॉम्प्रोमाइज पेशेंट होते हैं, और ये वो पेशेंट होंगे जिनको एंटीबॉडी बनाने की बहुत ज़्यादा ज़रूरत है, जिनको प्रोटेक्ट करना ज़रूरी है, क्योंकि हालांकि बच्चों में कम बीमारी होती है, कम सिवियरिटी होती है, लेकिन जिन बच्चों का इलाज चल रहा है या डायबिटीज़ का या कैंसर का, उनके अंदर ज़्यादा कॉम्प्लिकेशन बढ़ गई।
डॉक्टर केसरी,
सर
मैं आपसे इजाजत लूंगा। थैंक यू वेरी मच। आई हैव गॉट अ कॉल फ्रॉम इमरजेंसी।
आपका बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद। थैंक यू सो मच फॉर ज्वाइनिंग। डॉक्टर राजपूत सर, प्लीज।
महाजन डॉक्टर।
Thank you,
राजपूत
Dr.
सर।
Pandani. Thank you.
थैंक यू सर। मैडम, तो Is there any particular vaccine which you would recommend कि जब ये वैक्सीन लगने लग जाए तो कोवैक्सीन या कोई ये mRNA वैक्सीन, क्योंकि अब तो कई तरह तरह की वैक्सीन है जो हो सकता है बच्चों के लिए अवेलेबल हो जाए, आपकी पर्सनल प्रेफरेंस क्या रहेगी?
I don't think हम में से किसी को, I mean, so many other things go into कि logistics क्या है और अभी तक का डेटा क्या है. तो डेटा जो मैक्सिमम जो प्रोग्राम है वो फाइजर प्रोग्राम है, वो वैक्सीन तो इंडिया में आ नहीं सकता. सो इफ वी आस्क कि भाई लार्जेस्ट बॉडी ऑफ पीडियाट्रिक डेटा क्या है जो 5 साल से 18 साल तक है, वी विल, वो तो गवर्नमेंट ने डिसाइड किया है कि हम ये वैक्सीन इंपोर्ट करने की हमारी क्षमता ही नहीं है. सो वी आर नॉट गोइंग टू बी एबल टू डू दैट. Moderna is also not going to come because of the indemnity clause that they have asked. So we will have to be in one of these 5 vaccines. जो अभी इसमें से डॉक्टर राहुल अंकल ने आपको 5 बताए थे, जो 2, एक को इमरजेंसी अप्रूवल मिल चुका है पर कैपेसिटी प्रोडक्शन की कम है जो जाइडस कैडिला का है, एंड एक, सो दे ऑल हैव देयर प्रोज एंड कॉन्स. सो आई डोंट थिंक वी आर इन अ सिचुएशन टू से कि ये वैक्सीन होना चाहिए. एंड सी, टू बी ऑनेस्ट, we want the, you know, the children to get back to normal life. जैसे अभी जो आपने पूछा था कि एंटीबॉडी की क्या स्टडी है, तो सेकेंड वेव के बाद, अप्रैल के बाद पॉकेट्स में पीडियाट्रिक पॉपुलेशन पे स्टडीज हुई कि how many were actually already infected. 22% of the positive PCRs were actually in children under 18 years of age. But when they tested in the community, 50% of children actually had antibodies to COVID. So, you know, and most of them had never known that they have been in infection or they've been exposed to anybody. So those were sort of, you know, groups may study just to understand that what is the prevalence of antibodies. So we need a vaccine so that you know, there is confidence both within the parents and the school authorities to get back on track, because, you know, this is not helping any children. And when schools open, maybe there will be a little surge, maybe we will see little more morbidity, but that is not an option. And in terms of immunization strategy, it will come in a staggered manner. We are stuck to the options that are available to us, because it has to be free immunization, except for those who can afford it. Only then it has any impact or any meaning. So it has to be free immunization, and it will be dictated by logistics rather than the data. The most robust data is for Pfizer, but we are not going to have that. So we are going to have the 2 that are already there, and बाकी 3 hopefully in due course of time उनको licensing मिलेगी. And they all have their pros and cons. I'm not a virologist, so I can't really say which one is better or more. All of them have reasonable efficacy. अब मैक्सिमम डेटा फाइजर का है, तो मैक्सिमम जो मायोकार्डाइटिस वाली कॉम्प्लिकेशन है वो भी उसी में ही देखी गई है. इट्स एन mRNA वैक्सीन, so that's where it is seen, but that is the one that has been given the most in children, and with under very strict monitoring that every child is being followed and every complication is being recorded. So I think you know, they should not really behave much more differently than in adults. They seem to have the same efficacy that adults have in children, and my guess is that overall they will be similar, and those complicated cases, they are just very small on the balance. And I think because we have a mixed audience here, we should not highlight so much because वो बिल्कुल anecdotal cases हैं, and overall the overwhelming evidence is to immunize children and immunize children effectively. That is what's going to help us to get back to track.
Thank you, ma'am. I would like to ask a question. It's an open question to both of you. I request you to contribute. Had Dr. Khilani been here, I think he would have also contributed. Now, बच्चों को बीमारियां खासतौर पे वायरल इन्फेक्शन, इन्फ्लुएंजा, they get sick with these almost every 3 months to 4 months, 6 months. These are very common illnesses. And if I understand the present COVID that we are seeing, whatever data till yet that we have, is also quite a mild illness. If it comes to balancing between giving the booster dose to the adults and children, what is your opinion? आप दोनों क्या बोलेंगे? एज ए फिजिशियन मुझे लगता है कि अगर वैक्सीन कम है तो सबसे पहले किसको दी जानी चाहिए?
I think that the booster dose to and the primary vaccine to children should be given to those who deserve the most. That means immunocompromised people. Probably adult population above 65 years or above 60 years, those people should be prioritized for booster doses. Healthcare workers should be prioritized. And in children, those who have comorbid conditions should be prioritized. And as already has been discussed and as already been mentioned by Dr. Amita, that it has to be prioritized and it will come in phases. Even the first lot, they were prioritized, and this the same thing has to be done. But children who have comorbid conditions given. I'm a pediatrician, and I feel that children are as important as anyone else, and priority wise, everyone should have it at the end.
Yes, thank you. Dr. Amita?
No, I agree
Okay, ma'am.
entirely. It has to be, it will, this is the right way. And it is my, it's my impression that that's exactly what the government is planning to do, is to offer the booster doses to those at highest risk, the health workers and the, at-risk population, and also open up the immunization for children in a phased manner, looking at, the high-risk populations first, so that we can kind of keep up our production capacity and roll out the program without any interruptions or hiccups. So it is my impression that that is exactly what Dr. Nagpal said is exactly, of course, the pediatric immunization, little bit, maybe because of the licensing and approval, because the DCGI is apparently just waiting for a little more mature data before it gives its final stamp. And that may be one hiccup, but otherwise, I think this is exactly what the government is hoping to do or planning to do. And it seems a very prudent policy. I think I can say as a healthcare professional that the way the government has done this, I mean, our economics and, the health dynamics of our country are so diverse that despite that, what they've been able to achieve, and it seems very scientific, seems correct, and seem, like the just way to do it. So I'm sure that this would be more or less in that direction is how the government will be rolling it out.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Dr. Amita. And I think this last comment by both of you is very vital and very important. And I'm sure that in the SOCM we will formulate it, and as Shri Rajput has always done, and the team of SOCM, such recommendations are forwarded to the concerned authorities and the concerned people in the government.
One more comment.
Yes, yes,
Audience, that if and when it is offered to children, I think we should not have, based on the data that is there to date, we should not have, reservations about offering it. It may be done in a phased manner, but eventually, hopefully, it will be to all. So I think we have enough data to have confidence that it will be safe vaccine for children, and there should be, as there was not much hesitancy in adults, we should also not really face any hesitancy in children. So we should all have confidence in the products that will be coming out.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Today's was a very interesting and I would say a very fruitful discussion. And I'd request Anil Rajput sir to sum up and to give a word of thanks.
Thank you very much, Dr. Kesri. It has been a very engaging discussion. And since the topic is very, very critical and important, India, which is a young nation, and as it's always said that children are our future. So we are talking about our future, and it has come out very clearly by all the panelists that ultimately there can be a delay in taking action on this population as far as vaccination is concerned, but it is very critical and most important. As Dr. Kilnani mentioned, that during this period, obesity amongst children has increased. There has been contradiction in communication to the children. Many times they were told that there should be less screen time. On the contrary, during this period, we told them that you spend your maximum time on the screen. and even attend your school, college on the screen. And this has had a very huge impact on the minds of the children. Various other challenges that have been faced by India, and ultimately his comment was that all kids need to be vaccinated. Come what may. Even if there is a bit of delay, that has to be done. Dr. Rahul Nagpal, he talked about increased developmental disorder, psychological issues impacting not only children, families, anxiety, fear during this period. Talk of death, disease, disability has been the center point. So this has overall impacted the development of the children, and therefore it is very critical that we bring them out of the box that we have fixed them in the last year and a half. And if they need to be vaccinated, we should go ahead and get everybody to see the larger picture rather than just staying in a very boxed manner on this issue. They should also be freed from this jail type of environment that they have been living for the last 2 years. So I think we need to take up this issue with the policymakers and see how they can see the point of the criticality in this. And Dr. Nagpal mentioned that there are some vaccines that are under trial, and they can hasten the whole process and see how quickly they can come in the market, and children can be given and made their life more inclusive going forward. Dr. Amitabh Mahajan also made several points on how immune compromised children are facing this challenge. There are global concerns about the kids who have comorbidities, step taken, but limited exposure, indirect impact has been very high. But at the same time, she mentioned that Government of India has run this whole program of immunization very successfully. It's a very laudable program that Prime Minister has spearheaded, and I must say, not only India responded to this whole problem in a very swift and decisive manner. Many decisions taken by the government have been historic. And I'm sure going forward, all this will keep our country in very good stead. In many countries, you don't even have full information and data. And nobody has the kind of population that we have. Nobody has been able to, vaccinate so many people in such a short period of time. It has been very orderly done, and a technology has been used very effectively by the government. You can actually, in your handset, get your certificate for vaccine. So now the time has come that children need to be vaccinated, so that, as Dr. Amitabh Mahajan said, that they have to get back on track. That was her comment. So I think I would like to thank Dr. Khilnani, Dr. Rahul Nagpal, and Dr. Amitabh Mahajan for coming and sharing their perspective, their knowledge, and I'm sure all the participants would have greatly benefited from their presence. And we from SHM will do everything possible to take this message forward. And last but not least, thank you to Dr. Kesri, who's been a pillar of support to all of us during this period. And I'm sure going forward, we will continue to receive his association with us in taking the message on various illness to wellness programs that our country needs to know. And lastly, I would like to thank SHM team, which works very hard to get everybody together and create this awareness so that our country going forward becomes more swasth country. Thank you very much. Thanks.
Thank you so much. Thanks. Namaste.